mentioned it a little bit earlier, going to talk Gamecock name, image, and likeness with an expert on the program. I know that's odd, normally just rambling, but name, image, and likeness has been a ton of the college sports discussion and has recently changed a little bit. And instead of just speculating on that, we bring in Hilary Cox from USC, Associate Athletic Director. And can I call you a czar, a name, image, and likeness czar? Is that too much, Hilary?
It's generous. It's a little generous.
Wait a second. Can females be czars? Are there czar S's?
I mean, at this point, anything is something, I guess.
That's true. All right, so we'll call you the unofficial czar of name, image, and likeness at the University of South Carolina. Thanks for hopping on with us. How has your life changed, if it has at all, since last Friday? Things changed officially in the state of South Carolina with the law being repealed and schools now being able to facilitate name, image, and likeness deals for athletes.
It's changed, and it's interesting because if you think back to this time last year, we were gearing up with a plan, right? We had a plan in our head. We had all of these things laid out, waiting on the NCAA to say, here's our rules. On June 30th of 2021, NCAA says, take a step back for a minute. You guys figure it out. So we had to scramble a little bit and get some stuff into place. And so we had a lot of lead up to this July 1st of 2022. I mean, these plans have been in the works for months. And so we knew that we were moving, and everything was kind of culminating on July 1st. And then it hit, and then it was just like, okay, feels a little bit calmer than last year, which is great. But the biggest thing for us is this facilitation piece, right? And it's now we're in a space in the state of South Carolina that you can facilitate deals as an institution. And so that's kind of been the biggest change for us so far.
And can you put a number on it, I guess, of how that's happened in real life? Or I don't even know if that's kind of like behind closed doors or protected information or how that works. Can you give us a ballpark, I guess, of how much that has happened here just since Friday hit?
I'll tell you this, we did something very early on Friday, which it was really exciting. And it kind of happened organically. It wasn't necessarily in the plans. It just kind of happened organically. And so we're going to kind of get all of that finalized, hopefully the end of this week, start of next week. And so that was an interesting experience because we didn't necessarily have anything directly planned in terms of a deal that we were going to facilitate. But, we were just out on social media and some things came up with one of our teams. And so we just kind of tried it out and here we are. So that one happened organically. And then we do have some that are in the works, and we have other plans to kind of increase our staffing in this space so that we can bring in experts to do this. Because by no means, we laugh about the czar comment, like by no means am I a professional in the marketing space. I've been in the compliance world for 8 years. I'm an internal girl, so learning this external space. So we're bringing on staff and resources that can help us in this space so that we have professionals doing this.
Hilary, I am fascinated how you got to be sitting where you're sitting right now. You touched on it. You played college softball, right?
I did, yeah. Division II. So
okay.
a whole different world.
No doubt, but that means you had the love for the game, right?
Yeah,
and you wanted to keep it going.
Yeah.
And so the thought process is during your college career that you want to stay in college athletics. I imagine that's how it went.
I thought I was going to coach softball. I played softball since I was growing up, played it through college. My head coach, he was begging me to stay on to be the GA for the softball team. And I thought, I'm going to be a softball coach.
Where are we talking, Hilary, by the way?
The University of North Georgia. So jumping on, big Braves fan my whole life.
Nice.
Fulton County Stadium is, the early memories that I have.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm glad someone else thinks of Turner Field as a new stadium too.
Well, Turner Field was for the Olympics. That's how I kind of like equate it, right? It's, and now to see it clad in Georgia State is just, it's really messes with your mind.
We won't tell Sean Elliott that. No problem.
Yeah, good for them. That was definitely a glow up for them. But yeah, so the University of North Georgia, Division II school, about an hour north of Atlanta. Thought I was going to coach, and I had applied to grad school at Georgia and Tennessee, got into both, and was like, you know what? I kind of have this administrative thing. Some would say I'm a little bossy, but like I tend to lean more towards let me help change the narrative. Let me help move the needle a little bit. So decided to go to grad school. Had grew up a fan of Pat Summitt my whole life, and so Tennessee was kind of in my back pocket as something if it worked out. And I got a GA, an in graduate assistantship at Tennessee. That's how I ended up there. So did my 2 years and then came to South Carolina June of 2014, and here we are.
Okay, but wait, you skipped over a big step. You went from compliance to I would imagine that meeting is like, all right, guys, it looks like this name, image, and likeness thing is going to happen. Any volunteers to step in that space and head this thing up? And everybody looks at each other. And did you
Yeah,
go?
we all did a
Do
once over and kind of like sunk down and like don't pick me. No, it was. This is look, we're certainly in a wild world right now of college athletics, right? It's difficult to talk about and to try to plan for 6 months down the road right now. But we had these conversations. We knew that this was coming. We didn't know what it was going to look like. If anyone said that they knew, they were lying because we're all kind of we had that framework that the NCAA sent us, but we are in a whole new world than what the NCAA framework looked like 18 months ago. And but we knew that NIL, for it to be successful, it couldn't live in a department. It couldn't just be one department's responsibility because this is a large athletics department. We have a lot of staff members. We have a lot of initiatives. Each department is responsible for their day to day. And so if we kept NIL anywhere, it would just kind of get sucked in and be the responsibility of that department. And so it was important to us to move NIL out, let it live on its own, and have every department contribute to our NIL efforts. And so that to me has been the differentiator for us. There's not a lot of schools that did that out the gate. There's a lot of schools that are now realizing that that's the successful way to do it. And so they're kind of retreating and trying to build that out now. And so I think the stars kind of aligned a little bit, and it was just time for me. It was a great move professionally. I'd done compliance for so long, and it was really helpful to have that background of just understanding the complexities of the NCAA. And so I, volunteered as tribute, as some would say, and moved out and have kind of been on this wild ride with myself and Chance Miller, our senior deputy AD. And so we've had a lot of brainstorming sessions where we're just, out and about in the clouds coming up with ideas, and then just a lot of talking to people, trying to help them understand what NIL is. That's what we spend a lot of time doing.
I know education is a big deal there. She's Hilary Cox, Associate AD at University of South Carolina, in charge of name, image, and likeness to really simplify thing. Good morning from Hope on the YouTube live stream. Jason says, welcome to Unrestricted Free Agent there. And if you guys have any specific questions for Hilary, would love for you to pop them in right now, and I'm sure she'd be happy to answer. You mentioned social media. The Twitter handle is at Gamecock NIL. Has anything popped up on there that you were just like, whoa, I had no clue that this would be coming my way?
Yeah, it's so funny that happened. So again, I have a compliance background, right? So this whole getting out onto the external side of things is a little bit new for me professionally. And so I knew that we needed to speak directly to our fans. I knew that we needed to control the messaging and help educate. And so I kept thinking, how do we do that? We make these appearances, we do our media rounds, all of those things, but what's the easiest, quickest touch point right now? It's Twitter. So let's make a Twitter account. And it was just, I was so tickled watching it happen because we just kept adding followers and adding followers. And so we feel the pressure of putting out the content. And so, that's going to be mostly an educational Twitter account for us so that we can help people understand, debunk some of those rumors that are out there, some of these stories. but also be a space to celebrate the achievements of the NIL efforts here at South Carolina, right? Our student athletes are doing incredible things, and we need to celebrate that. We need to talk about that. Like, that's what better story than our student athletes finding success in this space. So we're going to do a little bit of celebrating, going to do a little bit of education, and then maybe we'll do some facilitation along the way, which is how that deal on July 1st came about, was through social. And we'll see what happens. So yeah, give us a follow. It's a lot of fun, and shoot us questions. We're happy to answer and talk about it.
Is there a specific question? And again, the Twitter handle at Gamecock NIL up on the screen on the video live stream right now. Is there a specific question that you get most often and that you feel like you have to put on repeat in general from fans right now? I would imagine it might be like, okay, how can I help, or how do we make sure that the Gamecocks are at the top of the list, kind of thing? Is anything like that?
Yeah, I would say we get a lot of how can we help, and then we get a lot of um, why aren't you paying the student athletes more, or why aren't why you institutionally, why is the institution not doing more? And so I think I want to try to unpack that one today, of just saying that this, when people say the wild wild west, right? People use that term all the time. That's kind of become the term to describe NIL. Well, my argument is that it's not the wild wild west. What you're talking about is a 4 or 5% of the NIL world right now, right? You're talking about the recruiting and these things that are happening, that this is not what NIL was intended for by any means, on any level. And frankly, that little small segment of this whole endeavor could ruin everything else that we have going on. But we're not choosing to ignore it. I mean, you can read some of the articles and try to unpack it and see what's happening. But what we're trying to focus in on institutionally is long-term sustainability, right? We need to help our student athletes maximize their NIL opportunities. How do we do that? We do that by providing them resources. We do that by investing into programming like the Gamecock Exchange, Influencer, all of these resources that our student athletes have, and soon, more people to help them directly with deals. So by investing in that, we find success in the long-term sustainability. And so kids are getting recruited in some sports, and schools are putting a number on that. We're not putting a number on it because, one, you can't, but two, that's bad business. What we're trying to sell now is the vision for the future, the long-term play. Here are the programs that we have in place to help you long term. And so that's kind of our attack at this right now.
When you said schools are putting a number on it, you mean if you come here, you will get X or a certain dollar amount, which is basically pay for play, right? But the only way you get caught for that these days, if there's some kind of evidence, and we know everybody's working around it, unfortunately. Do you see any kind of specific guardrail policy that can be put into place to make sure, like you said, this doesn't ruin everything, and we end up either going back to the old system, or we just accept the fact that this is how it's going to have to be, and all of that 95+%, whatever you're talking about, it's going to continue to be ignored, unfortunately, because of the massive dollar amounts and the massive change that recruiting it's happened.
I've spent a lot of time thinking about that question, and I'm not gonna lie to say that I know the answers, because I don't know what the genie is out of the bottle, so to speak. So I don't know what gets the genie back into the bottle. But what I think could happen reasonably is, we're only a year into this. We are only 12 months into this. And so in 24 months, in 36 months, when some of these things, these kids are enrolling in school, whatever it may be, and some of these business people are committing all of this money, like it just, I hope, maybe I'm naive, but I hope that the market corrects itself, and that we kind of get to a spot where all of these things are legitimate. And so there's a path. I mean, this is life changing for some of these student athletes. And so, and they should be able to do this just like any other student on the campus at the University of South Carolina can participate in these activities. just because they're a student athlete, they shouldn't be prohibited from doing it. And so,
That used to be your job, right? To tell them they
yeah,
couldn't do it.
among other things, among other things. But yeah, no, and I'll tell you the story. This is how the times have changed. We used to do, we do a lot of compliance education, and we would tell our student athletes, give them the example, if you walked into the local burrito store and they said, "Oh, you're on the football team. Here's a free burrito." You can't accept that, right? But if you walk into the burrito store and they say you're a student at the University of South Carolina, you get 15% off. Okay, that's fine. That's not an extra benefit as long as it's available to everyone. So now imagine in our professional world shifting our thought to now, instead of telling me they can't take the free burrito, to saying, why don't you walk into your favorite burrito store and ask them for a free burrito and see what they say and then post about it on social media. Um,
It's so
so
crazy.
it's definitely become this like complex professionally of just trying to pivot your thought process.
Well, that's the main reason why I love that you put it in that way. That's why you got to bring in other people, right? That's why you partner with an Altius and you get kind of outside influence, because it makes complete sense as you say it. Like, why? How can you even expect yourself or everybody else who's been operating in a specific way now to go 180 degrees and say, nope, here's how we're going to go now?
Yeah, and it's tough for our student athletes too, because some of our guys on the football team have been here for 6 years now, and so they've been getting compliance education from us for years. And now all of a sudden we're going to stand up in front of them and say, okay, remember everything we talked about before. Remember how we said no agents. You can't have agents anywhere. Your tickets are your tickets. And all of a sudden we kind of shift and help them navigate into this new world. It's definitely helpful to have a fresh face share that information.
Or you mentioned agents, and I imagine that's been the largest change for you. Facilitation, when I hear that, I hear, okay, now you're kind of the middleman, and instead of just having someone completely from the outside come in and facilitate this deal, now at least there are some familiar faces like you, and maybe a framework in place for the athletics department. Is that a fair way to characterize it?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And so we used to say no to agents, stay away from us. And now we're trying to invite them in because having that dialogue feels safer in this environment, right? It's being open and honest with each other of here's our expectations of what we expect. And then them also, the agents have been really receptive of it, of trying to understand what works here, help protect their clients, our student athletes. And so that's been a really interesting relationship because we've done that 180 again and said, "Hey guys, come on in and let's talk."
So what I'm hearing from you is maybe the biggest misconception right now about name, image, and likeness in general is everything's a big deal and it's all about recruiting the whole thing. Whereas there's a lot of other things, and especially from a long-term stability standpoint. I saw a story, I think last holiday season, about someone using their name, image, and likeness money to buy turkeys and give out to homeless and things like that. There are plenty of great stories out there that go under the radar or certainly aren't focused on from my perspective, from the outside perspective. Is there any other big misconception out there that you would like to address or educate everybody on as we sit here on, again, July 7th, 2022?
I would say that not a lot of the student athletes are bringing in 7, 8 figure deals. Like that is such an anomaly. And are there student athletes out there that's happening to? Yes. But more often than not, we're talking to our student athletes, and the question they're asking us is, how do we get an NIL deal? Right? They're not falling out of the sky. This is an extra, this is a whole new space that they have to put energy into. So, met with our men's basketball team yesterday, and we talked a lot about trying to find time, and maybe right now is a good time because you're 6, 7, 8 weeks out of classes starting, of trying to build your base, right? And trying to understand the space, because once you hit classes, it's full go, right? This is something that's taking more time. Again, it's just another thing. And so it's the amount of effort that they put into it. And some of our kids are hustling. Some of our kids are out there and they're doing it well. They're very business savvy. They're creating nonprofits. Like they're really excelling in it. And so we as an institution have to continue to shine a light on that and celebrate that, because those are the good stories, like you mentioned before, right? Those are the stories that we need to be sharing.
So it was last Friday where the Gamecock Exchange goes live, where you can go to Gamecocks online. I just searched it last night. Gamecock Exchange. You can find it. It'll pop right up as a business or even as an individual. You put your information in, and is it fair to call it like the Tinder of name, image, and likeness, right? That will end up connecting you to athletes. I don't even know what Tinder is technically. I was thinking like, what's one of those dating apps? That's the only one I could come up with.
Yeah, it's a matchmaking service. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fair concept, right? It's a piece of technology that safely brings businesses in and allows them to communicate with our student athletes. And so, quite frankly, what we were getting a lot of are questions from our businesses, local businesses saying, I want to connect with this student athlete. How do I do that? And for the last year, we've had to say, oh, we can't facilitate. You've got to direct message them on social media. And they're like, wait, what? That doesn't, yeah, it's not great. So the exchange is our way of saying, okay, safely come in. They're using our student athletes are using the influencer app already. And now you can communicate with each other. You can make the payment directly through that system. You can, the tax forms generate at the end of the year for our student athletes. I mean, it's great. It's very well organized and easy to maneuver. And so we're just really now trying to get all of our businesses to join in. And even if you're not quite sure if you want to partake in NIL, get in there and see what it's about, and let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation. It's still a great recruiting opportunity for us to say, look, we have X amount of businesses in the exchange who are willing to and ready to support you as an athlete here at South Carolina. And, that's a recruiting pitch for us.
So any kind of interest at all, it's a free service, and it doesn't require any kind of financial obligation in the whole deal. And that's it. What are the early returns, I guess, from both athletes and businesses? What are you hearing about this just a few days in, Hilary?
We're seeing that the businesses enjoy the filtering of what can happen in there. And so basically, if you have a certain interest, say you're in pharmaceutical sales and you're looking for someone who maybe is a pharmacy student or who is in one of our medical programs or something like that, there are tags within profiles so that you can search for those, topics. You can look for kids that maybe associate with your field. You can look for student athletes who have X amount of social media followers. There's plenty of different ways to filter through. So that's been really good of being able to target in and hone in on certain student athletes.
Couple of clarifications just from my standpoint. I know you have to get approved technically from a business or individual standpoint. Can you give me just a generic example of someone who would not be approved?
So what we're doing is it's also, we have to protect the student athletes, right? So it's making sure that you're a legitimate business or that the credentials that you're putting in are legitimate. Hopefully you have a website. We haven't ran into this yet, but you have a website that we click on it, it's reputable, the phone number, all of those things. Because what we don't want, these are direct lines of communication to our student athletes, right? And so yes, you have the Twitter world and all of those things, but we want to make sure that we're not approving someone to come in who, may be using it for the wrong reasons or after a bad game wants to share their thoughts with our student athletes. So we're looking for legitimacy.
I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah.
When you were talking about safe earlier, that one popped up in my head. Like, what does that mean? And that's what you're talking about, right? That kind of negative interaction. Or there was a story yesterday from Stuart Lake, who used to coach the baseball team, help coach the baseball team, and about an opposing fan base that called up a player's mom and said he had won an award. We need to know all this information about him just so they could heckle him. So it's that kind of thing that you're talking about. You want to make sure that does not happen, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's unfortunately that's the world that we live in right now. And so, we've got to make sure that we're not, we're here to facilitate NIL deals. We're not here to facilitate heckling or, messaging directly to our kids. So,
Jason asked, what's the student's reaction when they find out they have to pay taxes on NIL services?
that's been that's been the biggest learning curve, I think. And you have to understand that we're already doing financial literacy education with our student athletes prior to NIL. What NIL has allowed us to do is give them prime examples of, you just signed a $1,000 deal. What does that mean for you now? But there were a lot, not just that what I was hearing here at South Carolina, but nationally through our partners with Altius. But there were a lot of misconceptions about taxes that made you go like, "Ooh, that's not true." So we did just a lot of just basic. Hey, maybe if you get $1,000, maybe you put away 300 of it into savings, you put 200 of it here. Just because you got $1,000 doesn't mean you go spend $1,000. So that was interesting. And then Patrick DeMarco has told this story a lot about how when he was in the NFL, he had some apparel deals, and you had X amount of points basically that you could use to buy apparel through that sponsorship. And he got his tax bill after the first year and was like, wait, what is this? And so, them understanding that there's still a value associated with an in-kind gift or an in-kind NIL deal, that, you may get 6 free meals, but you have to pay some taxes on that. And so the whole idea that you could get a t-shirt and then have to go pay someone cash for the free t-shirt that you received has been a lot for them to kind of unpack. So
ultimately, though, when I hear about this being a major concern, I look at it the other way. Like, no, we as adults have to learn about taxes at some point. Like, why not have a bunch of help with a person like you, or a resource like the athletic department, guide athletes in doing that? And maybe it speeds up the curve for sure. But what has happened in professional sports has been awful in so many ways. There's so many terrible stories about money mismanagement. I'm hopeful that this is going to improve things by and large. What about you?
I hope so as well. I mean, there's no better learning than, real life examples. And what we don't want is to have to use someone as an example of a poor decision or something like that. And so, there's a lot at play here. There's a lot to unpack, and it can be difficult for someone. Think about, you're talking about a 20-year-old kid who now, is becoming a young professional in the business world, maybe did 20 to 30 deals. I mean, that's 20 to 30 companies where you're getting 1099s, you're getting all this information. That's difficult, right? I've been paying taxes for a very long time, and it's still difficult for me. I'm still like, hey, someone else go handle this for me. So trying to help them understand that if you're going to get into this space, you're going to have to invest in other resources that can help guide you, right? We can give you some of that base knowledge, but we are not sitting down with them and going through their taxes or anything like that. That's just, that's not safe for either side from a liability standpoint. But we can point you in the right direction. We can give you some programming, things like that can help them. But it's certainly, they're getting scholarship money. Like, there's just a lot of things that go into this. And then trying to explain to them that money that they receive could impact one of their parents who's filing taxes was also like a light bulb going off, and they were going, wait, hold on. So some of those tax related misconceptions, that was probably the most active learning that we did, was debunking some of those myths.
Craig says, I wish I had someone teach me about taxes in college. I'm with you on that. The lack of practical knowledge that goes on in classrooms, I think, is mind-boggling in a lot of ways. But that's what you're getting right now. Like, I feel like almost you're in charge of the school of hard knocks in a lot of ways for some of these kids hearing those stories, Hilary.
Yeah. And you got to think, you're bringing in student athletes from all walks of life, right? From all different types of situations. And so what an amazing opportunity it is here at South Carolina to give you this platform, right, of the university, of the athletics department, the resources that we have. And it's our goal to make sure that you leave here a better person, right? Whether that's in sports, whether that's in life, We want you to leave here better than when you came. And so investing into some of these things are really important to us. And it's something that we've been doing for years. It's just kind of manifesting itself a little differently now because we're in this NIL world.
What have you learned about your athletic department in this process?
Woo.
And maybe while you're thinking about that, I'll buy you a little time.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Comparing it to other ones, I would imagine helps you learn a little bit more about yours. You mentioned earlier about how a lot of them out there didn't see it as more of a holistic approach, I guess might be a way to put that, right? And just kind of compartmentalize it, and now have had to scramble since then. So I would think you learn maybe a little forward thinking, or maybe more big picture thinking than others, among some other things. Anything else popping in your head? I was buying a little time there. I feel like this is what happens when my wife doesn't know what to order and I try to fill the space at restaurants.
No, that's good. I mean, that's a really good question. Like, what have I learned? I mean, there's so many things. And I think one of the things that's been great to see is our willingness holistically with Ray leading the charge of moving in a different direction, right? Not being afraid to take a risk, because to your point, moving me out of compliance, having a senior level administrator oversee something like this was new. There was only, I think there were 2 of us, or maybe 3 of us on July 1st, 2021, that we were tracking on as someone who had, an associate AD level or higher title, who were kind of overseeing all the NIL operations. And now there's 20 or 30. And you're hearing about a lot of people who are moving out and doing that. And so I think it's been reassuring to see and encouraging to see the willingness of everyone here change what they're doing and make it fit into this NIL world, right? Because you're talking about all of these different departments: marketing, sports info, new and creative media, compliance. Like, these are departments who have been in their lane, focusing on what they've been doing for so long. And now all of a sudden we're saying, hey, we need you to kind of shift a little bit, and let's focus in more on this, because this indirectly impacts NIL. So it's been the collective buy-in of everyone, but the willingness of Ray and Chance to kind of push the envelope a little bit and take us to the next step. And I think that that's what you're going to continue to see from us in the months to come, of trying to be on the forefront. And it's a little scary to be, at the front of the line sometimes and trying something new. And maybe it doesn't work out. We don't know, but we're going to try it. We're going to try and see what that looks like for us.
When you gave those numbers before, the 2 or 3 and now 20 or 30, is that in your department that you were talking about, or was that talking about nationally, like people involved with the name, image, likeness, or at the high level?
The 20 to 30, that would be nationally now. So you're seeing like some of our friends here, especially in the SEC, starting to move out and take this on and try to make this overarching endeavor within their athletics department, because undoubtedly NIL is here to stay in some form or fashion. May not look like it does today, but it's going to be here. And it's continuing to educate everyone so that we can see the path, keep the main thing for us, which is help our student athletes maximize their opportunities, and all the decisions that we make along the way can kind of help guide us to that end post.
From a conference standpoint, how much, if any, has the SEC been involved with kind of what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Not so much. I mean, they're providing some information to us, but you got to think, like, we're in this really weird space now where, our athletics directors, our presidents, they're meeting regularly and having these conversations, sure. But, you're in a world now where you have to be mindful of the conversations that you're having with other schools, right? From the legal implications. And so some of these things that we're talking about, we're not really, peeling back the layers too much. We're not necessarily sharing trade secrets with each other, because we're also all recruiting the same kids. So some of the things we want to keep, close to the vest with us, and we don't want to share that with someone else so that they can go on and take that. We don't want them to know what we have in the plan. So it's been this really interesting game of, we all help each other. We're all trying to, make everything better for all of us holistically, but you're also playing a little cat and mouse game with each other of, I'm still recruiting against you.
Wow, that's fascinating to hear. I mean, you got the slogan, "It just means more in the SEC," even when it comes to information shared about this new kind of frontier and the whole thing. And I know you mentioned the phrase "Wild Wild West." I think we both have the same reaction when we hear that. Just like, oh, come on. I hate the phrase, and it seems dramatic to me. But I get why we are there, and you've kind of been living it the last year plus or so. And do you see it? Do you see this being your career moving forward, your career path, or do you see
I
like,
don't know. I have a
hey
lot
man,
of
I put
grays
in my
now.
time, right?
Yeah, yeah. The gray hair is definitely kicking in. I don't know. I don't know what this looks like going forward, right? I mean, it's what I see happening is, this is going to continue to evolve just like other big areas within college athletics, right? And so, where I kind of find my joy is taking an idea and giving it the legs and letting it go and setting it free and watching it go and then, try something different. So, I don't know. I'm still learning. There's so much here that we still have to unpack. Um, that there's no telling at this point. And maybe, we have some calls with our SEC counterparts back to our previous topic, and hearing things that work on their campus maybe won't work on our campus, or maybe what we do here won't work somewhere else. But continuing to try to generate those ideas in a version that fits into what we want to do here and what works at the University of South Carolina is always the goal. And if you can continue to keep your mind like that, it'll stay fresh. And everything's changing so quickly that it's always something new. So it's not stagnant right now.
No doubt about that. A fluid situation, I believe they might say in politics, or if we're going to be politically correct. So, what I've heard from you, and please correct me if I'm wrong, and I really appreciate your time this morning. But as we wrap up here, a couple of ways that Gamecock fans can help. First of all, they can just go on Twitter, follow the Twitter account at Gamecock NIL. But another way that even individuals, they can go to this Gamecock exchange and sign up, even if they're completely on the fence, or if it doesn't seem like it's financially feasible right now. Just to have those numbers up for you guys would be advantageous from a perception standpoint and in this NIL space right now. Is that fair, Hilary?
Yeah, that's very fair to say. And it's Gamecocks Online / Gamecock Exchange. We have it linked in our Twitter bio too, but super easy to get to. Go check it out. And there's a lot of information on there too that could be helpful.
Okay. Anything else that you would like to add before we let you get back to the real world and the tax forms and the whole thing?
Yeah, no, there's some phone calls I have to return, so I'd love staying on with you guys. No, I would just say, thanks to everyone for their support, and understanding, and the asking of the questions and the curiosity in the space. And so I just hope that Gamecock fans can continue to step up like they have already, help support the university, the student athletes, and know that we have some really, really exciting changes that have never been done in college athletics before that we have coming on the horizon. And hopefully we can visit again when those come out and we can start to peel back the layers so everyone understands. But we're really excited for the future here. And we know that this is going to help become a differentiator for us. And that's exciting. So.
Sounds good. Hilary Cox, Associate AD over at USC. Has got to get back to the real work over there in the office. Really appreciate you joining us and all the information. Good luck handling all this before. An excellent job hyping up the future stuff. Nice work.
Yeah. Thanks, Tim. Y'all have a good day.
All right. Hilary, appreciate her time for sure. Just weighing in with a great interview. Very educational on the YouTube live stream. That was crazy for me to hear at the very end. And what she talked about throughout the interview, it didn't dawn on me the reality of the 180-degree mind switch that people working in an athletics department in major college athletics had to have to compete in recruiting. She just ended with, Gamecock fans, thank you for paying our athletes. Thank you for your support. Please continue to do that. Her job used to be, Gamecock fans, you can't pay our athletes. Nuts, right? Absolutely nuts. But that's where we are. I mean, it's just one of the nutty things going on July 7th, 2022 in our country these days.